class, today we are on lesson 75 of Book 3, Saxon Math, and today's lesson is on geometric solids. So I have a bunch of solids here. If you guys were here in person, we would be passing these around so that you could hold them, touch them, look at the different properties between them. But since you're not, I'm going to do my best to describe them here on video, and perhaps you can find some of these things in your house. So we'll talk about that as well. So to start with, I've got all of them that you'll be responsible for in this lesson on the board behind me. They are also in a chart in your book on page 405. And we're going to start with the cube. We've talked about this before. The cube is a special type of rectangular prism where each of the faces are square shaped. So we have 6 squares that are turned into a 3-dimensional object, and it makes what we call a cube. Okay? The next one we've talked about before is the rectangular prism. Looks very, very similar to the cube, except you can see that its sides are not square. Its faces, excuse me, I should use the word faces, not sides, because that's what this is, a face. Its face is a rectangle shape, rectangular prism, rather than cube made up of square faces. All right, the next one we have is called a triangular prism. So here's what I would really want you to notice if you were here with me able to hold this and touch this. We call it a triangular prism because its base here is a triangle. And if we turn it around, we have another triangle. So it could sit on the triangular base. But notice these faces here. That's a rectangle, and that's a rectangle. So when we're talking about a triangular prism, we're talking about a solid 3-dimensional shape that has 2 triangular bases, and then each of those edges are connected with a rectangle. So, excuse my bell. What I don't want you to confuse it with is this. Looks like that from the top, looks like that on the base. This is called a pyramid, and it's also made from triangles, but in this case, we have triangular bases that are attached with rectangles. In this case, we have a square base, and each of its 4 sides are triangles that then come to meet at the point on top. So we call this a pyramid, and we call this a triangular prism. Okay? They're both made out of triangles, but they definitely have some differences, and they're not the same thing. All right, the next one we have is called a cylinder, and a cylinder has circular bases, and then those 2 circles are connected top to bottom. So a cylinder is similar to like a can of soup or a can of green beans that you might have in your pantry at home. This is probably one of the more common geometric shapes that you can find just laying around your house, aside from the rectangular prism. All right, so we've got our cylinder. Next, we have a cone. I have the hardest time drawing this one because it ends up just looking like a triangle, and probably on your 2-dimensional TV screen, that's what it looks like to you as well. But a cone here has a circular base, and usually we'll hold it this way and we'll eat ice cream off of it like an ice cream cone. So that's our cone shape here. If I show it to you that way, you can see how it comes to a point at the top there. Okay, and the final object for today is called a sphere. Another really common one. I'm sure you can find a sphere of some sort in your house. This is just a ball, but the math geometric word for it is sphere, spelled S-P-H. So we're saying like a sphere when we pronounce this word. Okay? All right, so what do you need to know about these shapes? Well, the typical question that you are going to be asked throughout third grade is, what shape is an object? So for example, you might be given a picture of a tent in your book. And in fact, I think this is one of our lesson practice questions. They'll show you a picture of a tent. So let's say like this. There's my tent. And they want to know, what geometric shape does this tent represent? So you have to look at all of your shapes and you would go, I see the triangle and then it's connected with a rectangle there. That looks like a tent, doesn't it? What was this called? This is a triangular prism. So you would have to identify that from the picture, okay? That's lesson practice A. Lesson practice B shows you a baseball. So I don't think I even need to draw that one. Which of our geometric solids does a baseball resemble? A baseball. That's going to be our sphere. Right here, that looks the most like a baseball. The next one is a can of beans. So, a can of beans. Think about your pantry. Does your mama cook beans from a can? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But which geometric solid does a can of beans look like? Any canned food is going to be a cylinder. Okay? The next one is just a cardboard box. So we'll draw this one because you don't necessarily know what the cardboard box looks like. So kind of the Amazon box that you might get in the mail. And what geometric shape does this represent? It's down to two. Is it going to be a cube or a rectangular prism? Notice that our sides here are made of rectangles, not squares. So this is a rectangular prism. The next one is an ice cream cone. So I feel like that kind of gives it away. Ice cream cone. Yes, that's our cone right here. And finally, they have these buildings in the desert of Egypt. The pharaohs used to be buried in them. They look kind of like that, made of brick or stone. What is that called? It's called a pyramid because it's in the shape of the geometric solid pyramid. All right, so the other type of question that you might eventually be asked is to find the volume of the cubes and the rectangular prisms. We've done some of that in other lessons. They may also ask you to find the perimeter of one of the faces of these shapes. So maybe they want you to find the perimeter of the base of the pyramid. They will give you the numbers that represent that, and we know that we find the perimeter by adding up all of the sides. The last activity I have for you today, since we've just done your lesson practice together, is I would like for you to go on a geometric solid scavenger hunt in your house or wherever you are doing school today and see if you can find an example of each of these shapes. As close as you can get to finding each of these shapes somewhere in your house. You can take a picture of what you find, or you can sketch what you find, or just list, hey, I found a tissue box, it's a rectangular prism, anything like that. That's going to be your lesson practice for today. See how many of them you can get. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.